Hey everyone, Coldheart here, and today we're going to talk about the top 5 champions from each rarity, so legendaries, epics, and rares that can help you beat Fire Knight Dungeon that much easier. So guys, before we get to the video, the Fire Knight Dungeon is so good dungeon for pretty much the late game because of the sets that are offered to us from the loot table. So basically, the most important set that you should be looking for when fighting the Fire Knight Dungeon, beating it, and every time you see that reward screen, you need to check the immunity sets, critical damage sets, the stun sets, and savage sets. Those 4 sets are so important in the later game. So guys, starting out, it's gonna be Lissandra at number 1 in the legendary category. So Lissandra, guys, if you don't know, is a master manipulator of turn meter because she has 2 very strong skills that can apply in the Fire Knight Dungeon. They do apply on the boss. The boss's turn meter can be manipulated, and she has a very good skill on her A3 that manipulates the turn meter of enemies and the turn meter of your allies by giving a 30% boost and a 30% decrease. She also provides a speed or aura to your team, and also a very good A2. Her second ability just fully depletes the turn meter of the boss. That's gonna help you just completely stop the boss from taking a turn. When that happens and his shield is down and you actually fully deplete the turn meter, then you have almost absolute control with just Lissandra in your team. So guys, the next one is going to be Martyr. If you do happen to get Martyr in your team of legendaries, then you should be very happy. Of course, Martyr is such a great champion in all areas of the game, even for PvP. Especially in the Fire Knight, she's very important because of her multiple utility. She has a decreased attack debuff for 2 turns and a provoke on all enemies on her A3. This is so important in the Fire Knight Dungeon because those waves hit hard, and if you do happen to go in the Fire Knight with much weaker champions to accompany Martyr, then she needs to protect them, and the way she does is through her A3 called Suppression. Provoke will basically force all enemies to attack Martyr instead, and also that decreased attack will cause Martyr to take much less damage instead of taking full damage. So that's very important. And not only that, she also has the increased defense and a counterattack buff on all allies for 2 turns skill. Her A2, that's 1 book to get it to 3 turns cooldown. That's fantastic. If you guys didn't know, counterattack buff champions provide such an easy way to beat the Fire Knight, although not fast. It's much easier because when you apply a counterattack buff on all of your allies, then when the boss does the AoE, all your allies will go and attack with their A1s with their default skills. So if it's multiple hitting default skill, then the shield of the boss will drop significantly without you actually even need to take a turn. So you don't even need to go there with turn meter manipulation champions. You can just go in with a Martyr and maybe a heal reduction champion, and it's gonna make your time in the Fire Knight so much easier. Next up, of course, it's gonna be Draco. Draco is like, he's the best champion, I think, for speedruns in the game. There's no other champion that can help you just speed through content in the game as Draco. He's also a master in the clan boss as well, but the reason he's so strong in the dungeons is because of his A3 that applies a weaken and decreased defense on all enemies for 2 turns. This is so important to drop the health of enemies much faster. So it's just a fantastic skill. 3 turns cooldown, and then he also has AoE poisons that can apply to 4 targets at random. It's such a good skill. You drop the health of your enemies with the poisons. He is going to be there to accompany other damage dealers with his A1 as well, which does surplus damage. If the target is low, then Draco will try and kill that target, and then if that target is killed, the damage that is extra is going to be applied 3 times on another random target from the enemy. So he's so good in just clearing out after your damage dealers go, and once you reach the boss, then he can also just apply the 4 hitting A2. Then he applies a weaken and decreased defense on the boss, and then just hitting with the A1 until the boss dies. So fantastic champion to go in there. Another legendary champion that's gonna make your life so much easier in the Fire Knight Dungeon, guys, is Longbeard, of course. Because of his skill set, his A3 is so good. Attacks one enemy with 4 allies, increase the damage inflicted by 20%. So he's gonna force your whole team to attack that Fire Knight boss. When the boss's shield is up, he's gonna attack with everyone. Even if one or two have a multi-hitting A1 default skill, then it's gonna drop the shield of the boss 100%. There's no way that shield won't go down, and once it's down, you're gonna start doing your normal amount of damage and also trying to reduce that perimeter of the boss. Just because of this, he makes Fire Knight just trivial once you get Longbeard in your team and set him up properly for dungeons. And at a 4 turns cooldown with just 1 book, I think he's a fantastic champion for the Fire Knight 20. Last but not least, in the legendary category, guys, it's gonna be Xavier. Xavier is such a good champion for Fire Knight 20 just because of the multiple skills that she has that can be utilized to kill the Fire Knight 20 boss, especially her AoE poisons, just burst damage. It's called Deadly Catalyst. What she does basically is if the waves or the boss has any poison on them, she will just burst all of the poisons and do significant amount of damage. The reason this is so strong is because you will take Xavier in there with some other champions that apply poisons. These can be rares, epics, whatever you have that applies poisons. Those will go on the boss probably, and when if you have the shield on, the poisons will not apply. So if you apply the poisons on the boss, she will do her Deadly Catalyst and she will drop the boss in an instant. The best speed teams for Fire Knight 20 do have Xavier in there, and she's just a fantastic champion. Not only that, she has other skills that apply poisons on all enemies, and then she also has that great A1 that attacks her 3 times and also has a chance to apply the poisons. This A1 from Xavier is a 3 hitting attack, so in case you need to drop the shield, then Xavier also has that good skill set, that A1 3 hitting attack that will drop the shield much faster than other champions, and then she'll do her A3 once the poisons are up and will drop the health of the boss much quicker. So I think this is the reason she's in the top 5 for Fire Knight 20. So guys, now let's look at the epics category. So the epics is gonna be the first one, Stag Knight. Stag Knight is such an important champion for all of your dungeon teams, and the reason is Stag Knight has a fantastic A2. He applies a decreased debuff and a decreased attack, helps you bring down the health of all enemies through the decreased defense, and it also helps you survive way longer with that decreased attack debuff. At a 4 turns cooldown without any bugs, this is a fantastic skill, and it only gets better once you put some skills onto it. And you also have that extra passive in case you're missing some accuracy. He will give a buff to your ally that doesn't hit that skill in the first time. He will buff that ally with some increased accuracy buff, and then on his next turn, if that ally has that skill available or another skill available, he will get a chance to apply his debuff. So he's such a fantastic champion, and I think he's way worthy the title of a top 5 for Fire Knight 20. Next up, guys, for the epics category is gonna be Skullcrusher. The reason Skullcrusher is so important for the Fire Knight team, guys, is because he has a complete set for Fire Knight 20 for the much slower teams. So guys, much slower teams are the ones that need you to drop down the shield every single time it's up, so the boss will not have his turn meter manipulated by your team, but then you'll be basing your way to beat the boss by having that counterattack buff on every one of your team, and then also trying to have a heal reduction debuff on the boss so the boss does not heal. So Stonewall, guys, applies a 50% ally protection buff on all allies, and also an unkillable buff on Skullcrusher, and also a counterattack buff on all allies. So this is so good because every one of your team except Skullcrusher will be counterattacking the boss once he does his AoE, and then once that AoE is complete, the boss will not be able to kill everyone because of that ally protection. Skullcrusher will be taking most of the damage because of ally protection, but he won't be able to be killed because of the unkillable buff that he will have on himself. As a 3 turns cooldown, this is such a fantastic way to beat the boss. And not only that, he also has a 50% heal reduction debuff that can be applied by Skullcrusher when he uses his A1. Of course, you'll need to get some accuracy on him. I do not advise having accuracy on Skullcrusher because you'll also be using him for the clan boss. But for Fire Knight, if you're having issues with Fire Knight, yeah, just put some accuracy so you can land that heal reduction debuff on the boss with Skullcrusher, and it will help because that boss heals depending on how much damage he does on your allies. Next up, guys, it's gonna be Seer. Seer is such a fantastic champion. She's a void, of course, so she's a bit difficult to get in terms of other epic champions, but if you do happen to get her and you have the other champions that go with her, she will be the best way for you to reach the boss in a few seconds, literally. She has such a good skill called Karma Burn, removes all buffs from all allies and enemies, then attacks all enemies. Damage increases according to the number of removed buffs, has a 50% chance of placing a sleep debuff on all enemies for 1 turn. This is such a great skill, guys. On the wave 1 and wave 2, if you do happen to have champions that apply tons of buffs on you, and if the enemies also apply buffs on them, then Karma Burn will just fully just take out all the buffs, do a huge amount of damage on the waves. She is the most important member of a team that just goes through all the waves and reaches the boss in a couple of seconds. I think she deserves the top 5 for the Fire Knight dungeon, but that's only when you have, you know, also other champions that accompany her for that, you know, speed team. When you do have them, then that speed team is such a fantastic way to just completely farm that Fire Knight overnight and get all those, you know, items. So guys, we couldn't have a top 5 in epic champions without talking about Allure. So if you do happen to get Allure, pretty much you don't need any other champion to bring down the Fire Knight champion, the Fire Knight boss. So guys, Allure is the best champion out there that can deplete the Fire Knight boss's turn meter in terms of consistency because of her A1. Her A1 not only is a 3-hitting attack, it also decreases the target's turn meter by 25% for each critical hit. So having Allure with 100% critical hit and just keep having her do her A1 on the boss will drop his turn meter completely every single time. She is even magic, so the Fire Knight 20 is force, so she might get weak hits. That's fine if you have a team that boosts turn meter all the time and have Allure at a good amount of speed, so close to 200. Then Allure will keep getting her turns and she will keep trying to do A1 and not do her A2 or A3 on the boss when her turn comes, as long as the Fire Knight is at more than 50% or so turn meter. So she will always try to reduce turn meter by using her A1. Such a great champion and the best way to reduce turn meter, in my opinion, even for endgame speed farming teams for Fire Knight 20. The last champion, in my opinion, that can be considered as a top 5 for that Fire Knight will be Scilar. The reason I like Scilar for Fire Knight 20, I also used her in one of my speed teams when I had a challenge with Hell Hades and Stu Gaming, was Scilar. She is such a great controlling champion. Has an A1 that attacks all enemies, A2 that attacks all enemies, and an A3 that also places a 30% decreased speed debuff on all enemies and decreases the turn meter of all enemies by 40%. So having a Scilar with a stun set and enough speed for her to go pretty much 2 times before the enemy waves go guarantees that you reduce the turn meter of enemies and also try to control them with that stun set all the time. So about 200 speed, a stun set will make your life so much easier in controlling the waves and reaching the boss. Once you reach the boss, that A3 will come very much in handy. So reducing turn meter by 40% is not nothing, guys. It's a very important way for you to reduce the turn meter of the boss when that shield is down. She's not going to be the one that reduces the shield to 0 because her A1 is just a 1-hit attack, but her whole set helps you get to the boss and also reduce the boss's you know, turn meter and also decrease his speed with that decreased speed debuff. So very good champion, and I think she deserves a top 5 in epics for the Fire Knight 20. This is time to talk about the top 5 rares for Fire Knight 20. If you do happen to get these rares, then you're set for Fire Knight 20 in terms of getting through it much easier. So Apothecary, I think he's number 1, and I even use him for some of my teams that I have right now to try and beat Fire Knight 20, even if I have so many legendaries. Guys, Apothecary has an A1 that hits 3 times. Very important way to drop the shield to 0. He also has a heal in times that your allies drop in percentage health. And then he also has an A3 that provides an increased speed buff on all allies and also boosts their turn meter at a very good 3-turn cooldown. So a fantastic champion that helps every single one of your champions get to the boss and also helps to drop down the shield with that A1. So Apothecary, fantastic champion, and you can get him from a mystery shard if you're lucky. Next up, guys, is gonna be Bellaware. Bellaware is a void rare champion, so a bit more difficult to get. You need some luck in the beginning of the game. after you open, you know, a couple of hundred void shards, you will have a Bellaware, I think. Basically his skill set surrounds you getting through the waves, so he has so much control over the enemy waves by, you know, placing block cooldown skills debuffs, decrease speed, and also decrease attack and decrease defense with all of his skills. Just get him with accuracy, and if you do happen to get a stun set, you know, he is gonna make your life so much easier in all of the dungeons. He's such a good way to control the waves with a stun set because of all his skills, just applying debuffs and also, you know, controlling waves with the stun set. He is such a great champion, and I think he deserves a top 5 for the Fire Knight 20 in terms of controlling the waves and reaching the boss. After that, you need some other help in order for you to drop the boss down, but the waves will totally be controlled by Bellaware. Next up is going to be Coldheart. Coldheart is the best rare in terms of damage for Fire Knight 20. There's no other rare out there that can do the damage to Fire Knight 20 that Coldheart can do. Guys, her A3 has a damage based on the enemy's max HP, so this is one of the few champions in the game that has this. She also has a decrease the target's turn meter by 100%, so this is very important. Once Coldheart has that shield down of the boss, she will get that A3 on the boss and completely deplete the turn meter, land a crit, deplete his health as well, and make your team, you know, a speed farming team for Fire Knight 20. She also has an A1 that attacks for 4 hits. One of the few champions that has an A1 that hits for 4 times, and this is very important because she also has a way to apply a heal reduction debuff. In case the boss takes a turn, he will probably have that heal reduction debuff on him and he will not heal. If the boss heals, it makes your life so much harder, but if he doesn't heal, then it makes your life easier because you'll drop his health much quicker. And another fantastic rare for Fire Knight 20 is Soulbonder. I have a guide on her on my channel. Of course, I used her for a couple of different dungeons, but she's fantastic for Fire Knight 20 for the waves and also for the boss. You can use her in multiple ways. You can use her in a stun set, you can use her in damage dealing sets, you can use her as a tank. There's so many ways you can use her. She is fantastic. Her A1 attacks all enemies and has 25% chance extra to inflict a critical hit. The same thing with her A2, an extra 25% to apply a critical hit. She will also ignore 75% of the target's defense. So very good damaging skills. And not only that, she has a skill that's very similar to Coldheart, but she does not do max HP damage, but she does have a chance to fully deplete the target's turn meter at a very low 4 turns cooldown. This is such a fantastic skill to have. Once that boss's shield is down, she will be able to deplete the turn meter, and then all your other allies will be attacking the boss and taking him down. Very good champion and very easy to get just because she's available through mystery shards. Last but not least, guys, for this video is gonna be Philhan in the rares category. Philhan is a void champion, much harder to get than others, but the reason that I do like him is that he has that, that reflect damage buff on all allies for 2 turns at a 2-turn cooldown. So very important. He will have this available at all times when he's fully booked. This is such a good way for you to bring down the boss's shield because reflect damage works the same way as the counter attack buff. Once the boss basically attacks all your allies, the reflect will do, you know, the number of attacks on the boss back. So if you have 5 allies alive with that reflect damage on them, then the boss will take immediately 5 hits on his shield. And I would also like to note that there's a dwarf also that does this. Runic Warder also has that reflect damage. So those 2 champions are so good for Fire Knight 20. But the reason that I do prefer Philhan instead of Runic Warder is because also Philhan can apply a block damage buff on an ally, so he helps that low health ally survive a bit longer with the block damage buff. That's an extra bit of skill that can help you drop Fire Knight much quicker because your low health ally that receives the block damage buff will survive and potentially help you clear the boss much quicker. So yeah, this was the video, guys. Thanks a lot for watching. If you do happen to think that other champions deserve to be in the top 5 for this list, leave a comment down below with your thoughts. Of course, I do these videos all the time. I also stream on Twitch, guys, so there's a link down there in the description for my Twitch channel as well. Thanks a lot, guys, for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the next one. See ya, guys.